Hello there, I'm Catherine Nicholson, Europe editor of France 24 here in Luxembourg City with Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for being here.
I'd like to start with the COVID-19 crisis. Here in Luxembourg, the amount of infections and deaths has drastically dropped in recent days and weeks. Is the crisis over?
No, the crisis is not over. I think we won the first fight against the virus, but to win the fight, it's too early to say. The figures are good. Nobody died the last two and a half weeks. The figures of infection are very low. People are knowing that they are part of the solution, but they can be also part of the problem if they don't behave and they do not respect the rules that we have. And we are going really from laws and restrictions, legally binding restrictions, to recommendations. And I really trust in our population. So we didn't win the fight yet, but we won the first round.
Well, one big change of the last few days has been the reopening of EU internal borders. Luxembourg is, of course, the country of Schengen, this town that epitomises free movement around Europe. A sigh of relief, I'm sure, for many businesses, for the economic side, but also perhaps a cause for concern on the health front.
Not also business and health is one thing, but also for people, because we are surrounded by borders. So we have Germany, France and Belgium around us, and the tree closed the borders. The tree closed the borders. So we were, in fact, locked down in our own country.
Did that surprise you, annoy you, that your European neighbours
the fact is
gave such disregard?
I think it was the wrong answer. To say that we close borders is a psychological answer that you give to persons to tell them, now we block the borders and with the barrier we are going to stop the virus, which is a stupid answer, because the virus, never a barrier, never a border stopped the virus. But the fact is, as you said, the first thing, and this was the most important topic for my country, was the health system. About 60% of persons working in health system in Luxembourg are commuters coming from these three countries. And I told to my three friends around Luxembourg, to German Chancellor, to the Belgian Prime Minister and to the French President, that if they would close the border, I would die. My country would die. We wouldn't be able to save persons in hospital. And they told us, we understand the situation, so we cannot close the borders. So we even had some laissez-passer, so passes to get faster through the borders. And we were even able to take French citizens from the Grand Est to Luxembourg. Even if we have a small limited capacity of beds, we were able to show them that we are partners and not enemies. And for business is one thing, but the most important thing was this impression that Schengen could give up like this, and just because of a virus. And I think this is a mistake.
Well, was it perhaps a sign that European solidarity, which is so talked about, actually is very fragile and can disappear in a moment?
I have to tell you that European solidarity was like a roller coaster. Was like a roller coaster. So we had moments where we really felt solidarity. For example, these European councils where in the news you were not able to find the positive positions. There were some positive positions. We were able to agree. We were able to agree on a deal to help also the countries who suffered the most from the virus. But then when we had a common problem, everybody wanted to have an individual answer.
So that could be a danger if there is a second wave of infections, perhaps?
I think we have to learn from the crisis too. And by learning, we should realize that a common answer would have been much more efficient. Also, sometimes, even if we have to admit that the differences between the countries were too big in this crisis to say that there was one potion for everyone and would work for everyone. But I hope that now for the vaccine, if we are able to have this vaccine, that we will be able also to not to have this deal, my country first, my country first, my country first, but Europe and the weakest first. And so that we will be able to have a distribution of the vaccines for these weakest persons who are the most vulnerable in this crisis. But to close the borders was for me an error, I have to admit, and especially when we are not coordinating. But it's country's choice, so I have to respect it. but I regret it.
Now, the coronavirus pandemic has ushered in economic crisis for Europe and other parts of the world, of course, as well. At the same time, we're looking at the UK fully leaving the European Union at the end of this year, as in exiting its transition period. The UK government's confirmed it won't be asking for an extension to that transition, despite all this disruption from the pandemic and a lack of progress in talks, it would seem. What do you think are the chances that the UK might leave this transition period without a formal deal for its future relationship with the EU?
I think it's not in their own interests. So the problem is we negotiated with Boris Johnson the deal, and now they still want to change. So for me, the deal is done. We should respect the deal, we should stick to the deal, and it would be a nightmare for both parties, but also for the UK. There will be no winner. We are all losers with this Brexit. There is no winner. This is a decision, we have to respect it, I regret it, but there is no winner. And now, by saying we don't need a deal, and so we put pressure on Europe, and they will say whatever we want, and they will accept whatever we want because they need the UK. We see it already now, that we, together with the UK, are stronger when we work together. And so to think that without a deal and having a no deal and having no relations, and then having to start again to negotiate for future relations, it's not in the interest of the UK. And I would think twice if I would be sitting in Westminster.
When you say that we have a deal exists, I assume you're talking about the political declaration that went alongside the withdrawal agreement and was meant to lay the groundwork for the formal deal, the treaty. Do you believe that the UK is in fact going back on its promises in that political declaration right now?
You know, the problem is, I worked with 3 British prime ministers. I started with David Cameron, then with Theresa May, and then with Boris Johnson. I have to admit that Theresa May did not always agree with David Cameron's position he defended. And then Theresa May changed, and then we had Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson did not agree all the time with Theresa May's position. But now I live in a situation where Boris Johnson is disagreeing with his own position. So I hope that in Westminster they will agree that what we decided to find the common solutions and to respect. The level playing field has to be respected. The level playing field is the backbone of the agreement. And without level playing field, without the guarantee also of standards, it's not because one is here, I don't say which one is here, and the other is here, that then you have to lower down the safety, the security, and the guarantees. We have to, the best thing is where we can, it's to raise. It's in the interest of our citizens.
We're looking at the EU's future, the 27 remaining member states. This EU recovery plan post-coronavirus is currently, of course, for much debate, of course. It's a €750 billion plan pushed very much by France and Germany, your 2 enormous neighbours. It would see mutualised borrowing by all 27 member states in order for grants to be given out, money to be given out to member states worst hit by the pandemic. Now, there's been a lot of pushback, as we know, from the so-called frugal states. Let's be honest, they are the richest states in the EU, calling for a higher proportion of money to be given out as loans that would come back eventually. Your country, the wealthiest in the EU per capita. Do you have sympathy for that position?
No. No. For me, we have to be able also to give. We have the principle of solidarity. I just can understand them that they say, if we give, we want guarantees. But just to say no, because we want to say no, it's not acceptable. We need to be around the table. I think we should not forget, Germany was also part of it. But now Germany is again in the normal. I call it the normal. I call myself a normal country also as a Luxembourger. But the fact is I do not agree that you come to Brussels with the paper, how much will I pay, how much will I get, and if I don't get enough, I want rabbits. Rabbits was because of the UK. It was in the deal of Fontainebleau, but the UK are leaving. So why still we have rabais nowadays? So there are so many things where I hope that we will be able, and I think that Ursula's position is important because we need to mobilize money, and it's the first time, instead of mutualizing deficits and everything, we are able to give mutual guarantees. I don't care about the names. most important is that we show solidarity to these countries. But I can understand from these frugal countries that they want guarantees, that they want that it's used for some reasons, and there will be also a monitoring of these expenses. This is for me also important. It's to balance one and the other. But I'm in the middle, and we think it's balanced for the moment.
Some people say that this moment, this mutualisation of debt, is a step towards a federal Europe, a so-called Hamilton moment. Do you agree? Is this a step towards federalised Europe?
No, it's a step in common projects, that's for sure. We cannot deny that it's a project in common view, common responsibility. But it's federal Europe. I belong to a strong Europe, but federal for the moment, when we have one leaving, somewhere the rule of law is still
a problem.
More than a problem. When I see some statements given by colleagues in Europe, the rule of law should be the backbone. Because the European Union, I spoke about solidarity, but the first thing is also union of rights. And this continent is strong, and it's not federal because we are so different. We have different histories, traditions, languages, and that's our strength. So I don't want to say that everybody should be the same. And when I hear some colleagues in Europe making our differences our problem, I cannot agree.
Thanks, Xavier Bettel. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching Talking Europe. See you soon here on France 24.